Hi, my name is Spencer, and I am a health educator with MHW. In this video series, I'm going to walk you through how to set up a meal plan. We're going to cover how to lose weight, how to keep the weight off long term, and most importantly, what do you need to do if you want to adjust your plan? If you're getting bored, if you're not losing weight, if you're unhappy for some reason, or if you have a temporary challenge like a holiday or a vacation, or you're going through a death in your family or something like that. How do you adjust your plan when it's not working or you're not happy with it so that you don't have to just give up altogether and you can keep moving forward? Before we get into the video, I want to say two things. The first is, I don't mind if you never pursue one of our programs, if you never go to the website, if you never watch any more of our videos, if you never spend a penny with us. The stuff that we're going to go over in these videos is going to be practical advice that should apply to any weight loss effort. Whether you're going to start a diet, whether you're looking at a new exercise plan, whether you're thinking about surgery or something like that long term. The advice that we give here will be practical advice that will apply to almost everybody, and will give you the power to start doing these things on your own. So even if you never pursue anything through us, that's okay. The advice that we're going to put through in this video series should still be helpful for you, and I hope that you think about it at the very least, even if you aren't going to pursue one of our plans directly. The second thing that I want to say before we even get started is that the people who are the best at managing their weight long term are not the people with the best diets or the best exercise plans or the best genetics or the best health or the most money or the best doctors. The people who do the best at losing weight and keeping it off long term are the people with the best support system. How do you stay motivated? If you're feeling like you're getting ready to give up, who do you go to get inspiration? How do you stay accountable? If you know that you're not going to keep yourself in check, who's going to keep an eye on you and make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to? How do you get ideas? Where do you go for recipes? Where do you go for advice? If you have a new challenge that you haven't faced before, you're going to a restaurant for the first time, where do you go to get that information? The people who do the best long term are the ones who have the best resources to be able to get that advice when they need it. So my first tip before we even get into anything else is to figure out who your support system's going to be. It can be friends, it can be family, you might have a doctor, you might have a personal trainer, you might have a partner who's going to go through this process with you, but it also might be an online forum. It might be a YouTube channel that you go to. It might be a place where you can interact and get advice digitally, and you never meet this person face to face. It might be us. Maybe we can be part of the support system for you, but make sure that you know where that support system is going to be and who you're going to turn to when you have questions and you need help. I say that especially before we start this video series because there's a decent chance you're going to have questions about the things that we cover here. And I want you to know that's normal. And when you do have those questions, you should check out our website and you should figure out how to get in contact with our office. Whether that means sending us an email or leaving a comment on our YouTube channel or actually finding our schedule for when we live stream so that you can ask a question directly to us and we can face-to-face right there get your questions answered. That is where the most success is going to come from. Hopefully everything we go through in these videos makes sense and it might click right away for you and you'll be ready to hit the ground running, but there's a good chance you're going to have questions at some point down the line. I can almost guarantee it. So get that good support system. That's all I have to say before we get into the series. Now let's get started. This is video number 3 in our series on making your own weight loss plans. And in the last video, we mentioned that there are 6 necessary requirements for someone to lose weight and keep it off long term. One of those 6 requirements is that we have to start making better food choices. In this video, we're going to address what that means. What is a better food choice? And how are we going to be approaching food from here moving forward? For the rest of our lives, how should we be thinking about our food choices? There's a lot to talk about, so let's get right to it. This is a resource called the HMR Calorie Guide. You can download it from our website. You can see that over there on the side. Without going too deep into it, HMR is a really cool company working in the weight loss field. They've been doing it for a long time, collecting a lot of data. And what they've done here is boiled down everything we need to know onto one single page. if there's one resource that I would give to anyone who cared about losing weight or just maintaining a healthier weight long term, this is the resource that I would give them. What they did is they put every food that you would ever want to eat on a scale from 1 to 10. I'll highlight that here across the top. And I'll zoom in a little bit closer as we go so that you can see things more clearly. Every food is put on a scale from 1 to 10, and as you come higher up the chart, the foods become worse and worse for someone who's trying to manage their weight. It just becomes harder and harder to approach those foods in a safe and healthy way. What this allows us to do is two things. And when we talk about approaching food in a better way or making better food choices, these are the two things that you need to be able to do. The first is that you need to be able to compare two foods side by side. If I'm at a restaurant or if I'm at a catered event like a wedding and there are a few different dishes that I can choose from, I want to make the best possible choice in that situation. That is one thing that this resource allows us to do. I'll zoom in a little bit closer and I'll give you an example. If at the wedding, they have an option with steak. Red meat is at about an 8, 8.5 on this chart. So on a scale from 1 to 10, it's almost as bad as you can get when you start talking about monitoring your weight. So if I have a steak option, right away I can tell it's not a great option. But if I was given two choices, one being the steak option and one being a chicken option, if I scroll down a little bit, you can see chicken is over here as a 4. So even if I don't have access to a nutrition label, even if I don't have all of the information as far as how it was prepared, even if I don't have the full ingredients list, even if I don't have my phone to look it up online, I can see that chicken is a better choice than steak. If everything else is equal, that will allow me to make the best choice given the information that I have. That's really important. You're going to see this cycle as an idea throughout this whole process. We cannot do a lot of work, and we don't want to do a lot of work. There are certain circumstances where if I was on vacation or if it was a holiday and I was trying to relax, I don't want to look up calories. I don't want to pull out my food scale in the middle of my Bahamas vacation. I want to enjoy myself. And furthermore, if I'm going through a hard time, like a stressful period at work or an emotional period, a breakup, or the death of a loved one, I'm not going to have the motivation to do that much work. What I might do is compare the two foods side by side like that, and if I can quickly say, okay, chicken's a better choice, it's still not a guarantee I'm going to make the right choice, but at least I have that information at hand much easier than any other approach I might take. If there was a third option, and maybe the wedding also offered lobster or shrimp or crab meat, some other type of fish, I can see that that would be even better than the chicken as a choice. And so on and so forth. We can list 100 examples for how this works, but a lot of it just has to be applied in the moment. If I'm given the choice of side dishes at a holiday dinner, maybe they have macaroni and cheese, and maybe they have some kind of rice with herbs in it. I really love sage in the holidays. Makes it feel like Christmas time to me. Well, macaroni and cheese is going to be a pasta with a high-fat sauce. I'll highlight it there. Rice is going to be right here. So, again, if I don't know any other information, I can see that the rice is going to be a better choice. Now, if my third option is some kind of vegetable side dish, maybe roasted Brussels sprouts, maybe some kind of healthy sweet potato casserole, there's a lot of cool options that get us even further down the chart. And we can see here most fruits and vegetables are going to be some of the best choices that you can make without knowing any other information. I'm laboring this point a little bit because it's one of the two most important things you need to be able to do. Just look at two foods side by side and identify. And one of the ways that I know this is one of the most important skills you need is because this is one of the questions I get asked more than any other. If I go to a restaurant with my friends or my family, constantly they'll point out two dishes and they'll say, Spencer, which one should I pick? Which one's better for me? Even if they know they're both bad, they still want to know in that moment how they can make the best possible choice they can. I get that question a lot. You should be able to do that for yourself. When somebody asks me that question, I have a lot of information about carbs and calories and gluten and artificial sweeteners and cholesterol rattling around in my brain. But the thing that I ask is where it falls on the guide. And if it's a better choice, it's a better choice. If it's lower on the guide, that's going to help us make overall better decisions. The other thing that this chart allows us to do, the second most important skill I think everyone's going to need, is to be able to look at a single food and identify right away how you want to approach that food in order to get the best results. And that can be done by lumping foods into categories together. Just streamline the process. Make it as simple as possible to know how to make these decisions. I get this question a lot as well. Someone will ask me, for this single choice, am I allowed to eat a baked potato? Or is a baked potato good for me? Is it healthy for me? Is it fattening? Is it bad? Is it going to mess me up? Is it going to throw me off track? I get that question in 100 different varieties. You should be able to make those judgments. You have to be able to make those judgments long term to know whether a choice is a good choice or a bad choice or somewhere in between. So here's how we do that using the chart. If I zoom out a little bit, you can see that there are 3 different sections of the chart. The foods that fall in the 7s, 8s, 9s, and 10s have a red background here. The foods that fall in the 4s, 5s, and 6s have a blue background. And the foods that fall in the 1s, 2s, and 3s have a white background, or a lighter blue background, depending on how good your eyesight is. Once you know where a food falls, which one of those 3 colored backgrounds it has, you know instantaneously how you should be approaching it. It's that easy. Again, without needing to know calories, without having to pull out your food scale, without having to go online and look something up or track down a nutrition label or have a specialized app that tells you whether these are good choices or not. It's that easy. Once you know where it is, you can figure out how you want to approach it. Here's how it goes. Foods that are in the red background, these 7s, 8s, 9s, and 10s, these are high-calorie foods. You can see that here, written across the top. These are foods that you're probably familiar with. If I asked you why you think you gained your weight, you would probably name almost every food in this category, but at least you'd be able to pinpoint 1 or 2 that you think gave you a lot of trouble. These foods are not bad foods. I don't say that these foods are off limits. I don't say that you have to avoid these foods and you never get to eat them again. What I say about these foods is that they are very impactful when you look at the scale. If we scroll down to the bottom here, most of these foods are 100 calories per ounce or more. An ounce is about the size of an Oreo cookie, so maybe 1 or 2 bites. It's a cube of cheese. Just a little bit will make a big impact. So what I mean when I address these foods is just to say, if I eat something from this category and I don't have any plan, it is probably going to result in me gaining weight that day. I have to do something about it. If I have a cheeseburger, and that's my favorite on here, and I don't do anything for the rest of the week, and I come in and I step on the scale, and I cross my fingers, and I say, oh boy, I hope I lose weight this week. There will probably be times where I get lucky, and I do lose weight, or I don't gain too much weight. But if that's my only approach, then I'm going to get in a lot of trouble long term, because eventually it will cause me to gain weight. You have to do something when you start to approach these foods. So what that means is when you're looking at this category, you have 2 choices. And again, this is any food that falls into this category. The first choice that you have is to try and do that work. This is going to be traditional exercise type stuff or traditional dieting type stuff. You're going to have to track the calories. You're going to have to worry about the portion size. You're going to have really good willpower. You're going to have to do more exercise this week. You're going to have to make really, really good choices for the rest of the food choices you make. You're going to have to think about it in some way. But you should be able to say when you get on the scale, what did I do in order to counteract or in order to balance out that choice that I made? That is an option that you have, and I won't take it off the table. Sometimes it will be worth it to you, particularly in the long term. If I'm at my goal, there's no reason why I can't experiment with wanting to try a cheeseburger every once in a while. And maybe I'm willing to do a little bit more exercise because it's something that I really want. or because it's a special occasion, it's my birthday, or it's a vacation, or something like that. There will be circumstances where it's worth doing that work, and I'm willing to experiment with it. But I have to repeat what I've said in every other video up to this point, which is that we don't want to do work long term. It is the reason why we quit. I can't do this work every day. I can't every single day eat this cheeseburger and think that I'm going to do an extra hour on the treadmill in order to balance it out. It's just not possible, and it's not realistic in the long term. So it is an option, and it's an option that we can explore, but it's a very risky option to exercise if you're not at your goal. I really strongly recommend going for option number 2 if you're still trying to lose weight. If you're not at your goal yet, you do have the option of experimenting with this category, but I would say go for option number 2. And option number 2 is to try and find a substitution. It's not get rid of it, it's find a suitable replacement. If I like cheeseburgers, and I do, then it's probably a good idea for me to experiment with what alternatives I have. Because I'd like to be able to eat a cheeseburger every day if I could. I'd like to do it whenever I get the whim. Sometimes I just get a craving and I say today would be a good day for a cheeseburger. I want to be able to do that and not have to worry about whether I can balance it out or make better choices or whatever. I just want it to work. For that to happen, I could look at different options for the beef. Again, red meat is kind of the main thing in a cheeseburger that's going to get you in trouble. Well, what if I did a veggie burger? If I could find a veggie burger that I liked, I'm getting out of this range. I won't have to do as much exercise. I won't have to do as much calorie counting or meal prep or worrying about my willpower. I have to find a veggie burger that I like, and that can be work too. But once I find a good veggie burger, or I find a good recipe that I enjoy that I can make for myself, all the rest of the work is taken care of for me. If I don't want to try a veggie burger, I could try a turkey burger. That'd be a decent option. And again, you'd get the same benefits. The only work I have to do is figure out how to make the turkey burger taste good. But if I can do that, and I'm happy with that substitution, then all my work is done. I could go even further down, and I could do ground chicken, or even a chicken breast as a sandwich. Sometimes I'm happy with that. I don't really need the burger. I like a chicken sandwich too. Maybe I could do something with deli meats. I could do a turkey club or a ham sandwich. And sometimes that's all I need and I'm happy. If I go even further down, I might do something with seafood. Fish sandwiches. I do crab cakes quite a bit, or wraps with shrimp in them. And I don't miss the burger when I'm doing that, because I have good recipes, good sauces, good veggies. I know what I like on the side. I know how to make the dish in a way that I enjoy it. If I can do those things, if I can find that replacement, then I can be happy on a regular basis and not have to do as much work. Specifically, if I can find a direct replacement. If I can find a turkey burger or a veggie burger, which tastes pretty close to a beef burger, and I like it, then I can have a burger any day I want. I can have it twice in the same day if I want, and I don't have to worry about it. I just know that it's a good choice, and all of the work is taken care of for me because I got away from this category. There are other ingredients in a burger that I have to consider. What do I want to do about the cheese? What do I want to do about the sauce? What do I want to do about the French fries on the side or the milkshake afterwards? So you really have to dig through the whole meal. But when you can find the replacements that get you out of this red background, 7, 8s, 9s, and 10s, all of the work that you would typically have to do is done for you. So that's the way that we approach this range, these high calorie 7, 8s, 9s, and 10s. 2 options. Try and find a replacement. If I can't find a replacement, do some extra work. Now, as one last thing I'll say about this category, if you come into one of my groups and you ask folks who are in the process of losing weight and keeping their weight off long term, if you say, hey, I'm having trouble with pizza, what do I do about pizza? No one in that group will say do more exercise. They really ignore that option altogether. They won't say, oh, just eat a little tiny piece of pizza. What they'll do is tell you how they replace it, what substitutions they make for the crust, for the cheese, for the meats, how they go about approaching getting out of this range. Because people who have truly worked on their weight understand it's an option to do exercise, but I'm not going to do it. It's an option to count calories, but I'm not going to do it. Not long term. So that's not saying they never eat pizza, but it's when you're in those groups, we're not going to discuss those options because realistically, it's not something we're going to do very often. Now let's get out of this range and let's go all the way down to the other end of the spectrum. This white background, these 1s, 2s, and 3s. Now I'll show you the calorie count again. These are about 20 calories per ounce on average. So it's 1/5 of the calories of the red background foods. These are foods that are also very easy to understand. There's one singular rule if you know there's a food that falls into this range, and that is figure out how to use it. Figure out how to make it taste good, figure out how to make it portable, figure out how you can get it at a restaurant, figure out how you can have it on a regular basis. Because these foods make it very hard to gain weight. That is the quality that these 1s, 2s, and 3s have that is most important in the long term. They make it very hard to gain weight. Here's what I mean by that. If you're in a circumstance where you're eating on a normal everyday basis, you have a baseline level of willpower and self-control, you can make certain choices, you have more of an understanding of yourself, you know what you're trying to do. As soon as you get tested, the day becomes more stressful, you're in a bad emotional state, maybe you're celebrating something, maybe you're depressed about something. You don't have a lot of time, you don't have a lot of money, you don't have a lot of energy. As soon as you get put in a position where you're challenged, all of your willpower and self-control drops out entirely. These are the places where you quit your diet because you say, I have all this other stuff going on in my life, I've got to put this diet to the side. I can't do this and also handle what else is going on in my life right now. These are the times where you're most likely to lean on comfort foods, you're most likely to give in to temptations, and more than anything, it's the times where you're least likely to fight, to try and make good choices. You're going to eat what's convenient, what's fast, what tastes good, what suits your needs. As soon as there's a even modest amount of challenge, that sort of thing will happen. You need foods that when you're in those positions, you cannot get in trouble. Even on these worst case scenarios, you still will not gain weight. There are a couple of things that have that quality. And there are a couple of different categories of foods that fall into this range. The first and the biggest and the most important is foods that are very, very low in calories, but that give you a lot of volume. Okay, so for example, I always like to use green beans as an example. Most vegetables fall into these 1s, 2s, and 3s. There we go. Green beans are one. Again, my clients don't count calories, but green beans per cup are somewhere between 20 and 40 calories per cup, depending on exactly how they're chopped or prepared. French cut green beans have a little bit more calories because you can pack more green beans into one cup. But generally speaking, 20 to 40 calories per cup. If you ate a can of green beans, it's about 2 cups. So a can of green beans might be 40 to 80 calories. If you were supposed to have 2,000 calories in a day, even if you ate 50 cans of green beans, you're going to have a hard time messing up your weight loss. There has never been, and I'll challenge anybody on this, there has never been a moment in your life where you ate 50 cans of green beans in one day. And there would never be a moment where you ate 50 cans of green beans in one day. The only people I know who have eaten 50 cans of green beans in one day are ones that are competitive eaters. There was a contest to see who could eat the most green beans. Outside of that, if you were really hungry, you still have not eaten 50 cans of green beans in one day. If you got really stressed, you still probably didn't eat 50 cans of green beans. If you were bored, maybe watching TV and you were just looking for a snack, you weren't paying attention, and you just let yourself go, if it was chips, it might get you in trouble, but not green beans. You've never eaten 50 cans of green beans in one sitting. That is precisely why the foods in this range are so important. Any food that falls into the 1, 2, and 3 will have this quality where even if you gave yourself permission to eat as much as you wanted to, you would still have a hard time getting in trouble. Now, fruits and vegetables are maybe a more obvious example of this. We've been told they're healthy. The reason why they're so good for weight loss is exactly this quality. But I'll point out another food that falls into this range that maybe you're not as familiar with, and that is sugar-free gelatin. So sugar-free like Jell-O cups. If you look at the prepared sugar-free gelatin cups, they're 5 to 10 calories per cup. And hopefully you know what I'm referring to. Gelatin, sugar-free gelatin, should be like here. This is one of the ones that isn't written explicitly on this chart, but I have all my clients write in sugar-free gelatin in one of these two categories. If you had 10 of these sugar-free gelatin cups back to back, it would only be 100 calories on the high end. If you had 100 of these sugar-free gelatin cups, it would be 1,000 calories. We're still only halfway if your goal is to have 2,000 calories for the entire day. And again, I'll stress, we don't really count calories as a part of my programs. There are a couple of clients that do end up relating to it in the long term, but if I know I can eat 100 sugar-free Jell-O cups and not get in trouble, I don't have to count calories. So long as I stay in this range, I'm never going to eat that many gelatin cups. Even on my worst day, I think I've maybe had 5 sugar-free gelatin cups. And it was tied to a holiday or some specific dessert that I was building. It just does not happen. Those are the foods that are most important that will fall into this range. Just foods that are naturally low in calories that you can't get in trouble with. And again, everything that falls into this range will have the quality where you would not ever eat too much. Either you're going to get full or you're going to be tired of eating it before you ever reach the point where you start to gain weight. I'll highlight seafood here. Shrimp is one that I think is important to understand has this quality. Shrimp is about 20 calories per ounce. So if you ate a pound of shrimp, you're talking about 16 ounces. So 300 calories, give or take. You would have to eat in a single day to get to 2,000 calories, 7 pounds of shrimp. And I'm not saying it's not possible, but I'm saying it's very unlikely that you've ever reached that point. And if you did, there was a lot of other challenges that were going on that day too. You can't gain weight eating these 1s, 2s, and 3s if you approach them properly. You're going to be full, you're going to be satisfied. Egg whites is another one, but I don't want to highlight each and every individual food here and explain why this works. It's just the way that these 1s, 2s, and 3s go. They are so low in calories in most cases that you would never get into a position where you're in trouble. Now, there are 2 other kinds of foods that fall into the 1s, 2s, and 3s. They're a little bit tricky, and it'll take some experimentation to figure out exactly how these ones work. One of them is a food that has a powerful flavor or has some other control where you just would not want to overeat it. For example, I like foods that are really spicy, and even foods that are maybe higher in calories. When they're really spicy, they automatically sort of control themselves for me in terms of portion size. I can't overeat them because the heat is overpowering. Things that are very sour, things that are very bitter, for some people, things that are very sweet become things that are hard to overeat. I would never really get in trouble eating them because the flavors are just too powerful. Cost can be another thing that might fall into this category. If something's very expensive, I can't afford to overeat it. So again, even if it's maybe a little bit higher in calories, I would never really get in trouble with something like that because I can't afford to eat them on a regular basis anyways, or I couldn't afford to have a big portion of them. One example of that might be like fancy nuts or fancy alcohols or something like that. When you start getting really high quality or just expensive for no reason, even though they're not great for weight loss, they're not really a problem for me because I'd never come into contact with them in a way that I could get in trouble. So hopefully that makes sense. There's one more category of foods, again, which falls into the same idea. I could not overeat them, and I would not overeat them in most circumstances. And those are foods that are already prepared, foods that are already portion controlled. This is a tricky sort of food that falls into this range, but those can be very helpful in the long-term balance. The reason why I say these are kind of tricky is because a food that's already prepared or portion sized could be prepared well, or it could be prepared poorly. If I go to a restaurant and I get a cheeseburger, it's already prepared, it's already portion sized. I don't have to think about it, I don't have to do any work, but it's prepared in a bad way with high calorie foods, and the portion size is too big, it's more than I should be eating. So in those cases, not so great. But on the other end of the spectrum, there are meal replacement shakes, there are entrees, frozen dinners, and prepared meals that are already portion sized and were designed to be healthy. Were designed to help support a weight loss. Those things make it easier to make good choices. It's harder to overeat. And done well, it actually becomes impossible to overeat, but it's certainly harder to overeat. The best example of this is foods that maybe fall in this middle range. We'll talk about these in just a second, but chicken is something that is a good food, but we sometimes worry about the portion size. And similarly, pasta is something that is a good food, or can be a good food, but we sometimes worry about the portion size. If I'm given a bottomless bowl of pasta, I can serve myself a lot of pasta, and I might. But if I'm given a prepared meal where the pasta is already measured for me, I'm more likely to just accept that portion size, psychologically. Even if I'm in a stressed environment, I'm hungry, I'm tempted, whatever the case may be. Simply because it's already portion sized for me makes me more likely to approach it in a positive way. So that's definitely a more complicated subsection of foods, but it is important to understand there's a lot of data on meal replacements with regards to weight loss, showing that people who have some meals that are prepared for them or some choices that they don't have to think too much about have an easier time losing weight and keeping it off long term. I will show you, we have those built into this guide here, just below fruits and vegetables. It's an important subsection of foods here. The ones that you're probably most familiar with are shakes. Again, you have to find good shakes because there are shakes that make you gain weight and shakes that make you build muscle and shakes that are designed for nutrition. And those are all separate from meal replacement shakes. Meal replacement shakes are designed to be low in calories, to have a lot of volume, to fill you up, to keep your hands busy. But those are an important subclass of meal replacements. Then you have meal replacement entrees. And again, you have to have good entrees because there are lots of frozen dinners and restaurant meals and prepared options that aren't so great for you. Canned foods, maybe, that aren't so great for you. But if you find an entree that is prepared well, then you know that you don't have to worry about how long it's going to take to cook dinner that day. You don't have to worry about how to make it taste good because it's a self-contained meal. It's already spiced and flavored. You don't have to do too much work. You don't have to worry as much about overeating because the portion is already measured for you. It just makes the decision-making process that much faster. There's a lot of good data behind this, showing substantially better weight loss results when we're using meal replacements. And in fact, when we build our plans in the very next video, we're going to put some meal replacements in as a part of that plan making process. And you'll have the choice of how much or how few you want to use. But these are choices that are really helpful in helping to give you that quality of 1s, 2s, and 3s where you don't have to worry that you might get in trouble. You don't have to worry about overeating because a lot of those decisions are made for you. So that's the last category, or the last subsection of foods that falls into this 1, 2, and 3 range. There are foods that are just so low in calories, you really cannot get in trouble even if you eat a bunch of them. There are foods that are so restricted in some other way, either because they're very spicy or because they're very expensive or because there's some other barrier where you don't have access to them to eat them in large portions. And then there are foods which are just already controlled for you, so there's less willpower on your part to try and make good decisions. Foods that fall into those three categories can very easily become 1s, 2s, and 3s if they're controlled well. The last section of foods is the 4s, 5s, and 6s, these middle range foods. And we started to talk about these a little bit. Most of your proteins are going to be your classic examples in here. Chicken's good, lean cold cuts are here, eggs are here, lean pork chops are going to fall in this range, turkey meat is in here, and then the turkey offshoots like turkey hot dogs and turkey pepperoni and turkey sausage. Those will all be in here. There are even some lean red meats, some beef that's really lean, but also things like buffalo and venison and deer, if that's something that you guys get into where you are. Below that, you'll see pasta and bread and rice, which is something that a lot of people are very scared to have as part of a weight loss routine. But those are in this middle range as well. So they're not in this high calorie 7, 8, 9, and 10. You've got to be very careful about how you approach them. These foods in the 4s, 5s, and 6s are foods that you can eat every day. And they're foods that I think you should be eating on a regular basis, mostly because they provide a lot of variety. If you only ever ate foods in the 1s, 2s, and 3s, if that's the only category you went into, it would be very easy to lose weight. It would be very easy to keep your weight off long term. If you picture, for an example, a diet where you only eat salad, yes, very easy to lose weight. Or a diet where you're largely eating seafood, very easy to lose weight. The problem with that is that you're restricted in terms of variety. So it's a little bit boring to get put into that position, and I think you get into the territory of it's too hard to sustain, too hard to stick to doing that long term. So I think it's important to get into the 4s, 5s, and 6s, especially when I'm talking to an American audience, a normal person. You're probably used to looking at different proteins and grains. So these are good foods. There are two concerns for these foods. You should be eating them every day. You absolutely can eat them every day. The two concerns that you will have are, number one, how do you prepare it? Because chicken is here, but if you bread it and then you fry it in oil, fried chicken is not there anymore. Chicken is a good choice, but the oil that you use, I'll highlight it here. The oil that you use to fry it is going to be in this high calorie range. Similarly, if you take your pasta, which is here, it's a good choice, but if you want to put butter on it, now we're in trouble. If you want to make a pasta salad with mayonnaise, now we're in trouble. If you want to put cheese on it, now we're in trouble. So the food itself is not a terrible choice, but the way that you prepare it can pull it into a higher calorie range and can make it more dangerous. One of the things that I stress first with my clients is getting the right sauces and spices, and we do talk about this in the next video. The wrong salad dressing can ruin a perfectly good salad. It can drag the whole thing into this high calorie range. A singular choice, a little bit of oil, a little bit of cheese, a little bit of sugar, can get somebody into a lot of trouble. And it's really frustrating because it doesn't look like it could make that big of an impact. It's just a tablespoon of oil in my pan to cook my vegetables. Can it really affect my weight loss in that kind of capacity? And the answer is yes. It's just a little bit of cream that I'm putting in my coffee. Can it really make that big of a deal? Yeah. So we do want to be very careful about how we're using these condiments. More than anything, the condiments that fall into the 7s, 8s, 9s, and 10s will get you in trouble. But besides that, these 4s, 5s, and 6s are very good. We need to think about how we're cooking. Now, the other thing that you're going to wonder about is portion size. I know it's going to be something you're asking from the very beginning. My problem with pasta is that I eat too much pasta. My problem with bread is that I eat too much bread. My problem is that I'm a big meat eater, and so I want a 12-egg omelet, or I want a lot of steak or a lot of chicken when I eat them. To that, we get to what I feel is the most important thing to understand about this chart overall when it comes to weight loss. At this stage, I'm going to zoom out here so we can look at the big picture. and I'll answer our question about portion size. The foods with the red backgrounds, we have two approaches. I can do some work, but I'm probably not going to do that work most of the time. So I need to find alternatives. I can't stress this enough. I have to take the time to figure out if I can make a turkey burger taste good. If I can, then most of the time when I want a burger, I'll eat a turkey burger and I don't have to worry about it. I just know that it's an okay choice at that stage. Those are our two options. Replace it or do some work. You don't want to do some work, so we try to replace it. When we do live streams, when I do groups, when I coach one-on-one, that's the side that we emphasize. What are our options for replacing things? So if that's interesting to you, I'd recommend you watch more of our YouTube videos. Come check out our live stream. Think about joining one of our in-person groups. For the 1s, 2s, and 3s, there's one singular decision that you're making, and that is, how do I get more of these? Sometimes a helpful way to think about it is, how does it solve my challenges? If I need something portable, what can I do that's over here that's portable? If I want a good side dish for my dinner, what can I find that's over here that's a good side dish? If I want to go to a restaurant, what can I find that's over here that I can get at a restaurant? If I want comfort food, what can I find that's over here that's comfort food? And you keep going down that line. These are all good choices. So can I make it taste good? Can I make it affordable? Can I get this into my routine? Because you will almost never go wrong when you're eating something over here. If I'm having an apple, there's very few foods in the world that could be a better choice in that moment. If I wasn't eating that apple, it might be a cake or a donut. It might be potato chips or crackers or pretzels. Nothing else in the world could be better than the apple in that moment. It will always be a good choice to utilize these 1s, 2s, and 3s. And I specifically emphasize meal replacements as a subsection of this category because meal replacements are something that most people aren't as familiar with. I know you've been told to eat more fruits and vegetables, but you need to understand how strong the data is on just having some of your choices taken care of. If I have a meal that I know is healthy, that's already been vetted, that's created to be a positive choice, that's one less thing I have to think about. If I have a prepared entree and I eat that for lunch, then I don't have to think about my lunch and I can focus on what I'm going to cook for dinner. It makes all of that process just that much simpler. And again, you don't have to control yourself as much with these things. You don't have to do as much portion size. For the 4s, 5s, and 6s, more than anything, I have to make sure that I don't cook it using the 7s, 8s, 9s, and 10s. I just have to prepare it without going into that range. If I can, I'd like to find sauces and spices that fall into the 1s, 2s, and 3s. And if you can't read this, low-fat gravy is here, soy sauce is here, mustard. There are a lot of low-calorie and sugar-free, fat-free options. This is one of the biggest pages that we'll have on our website, on the main website, is just over time compiling more and more of these sauces and spices that I think you're going to want to use over time. Because this is what's going to make it fun. This is what makes everything else taste better and become more accessible. If it doesn't taste good, I'll go back to eating my cheeseburgers. So yes, we want to find alternative ways of making these 4s, 5s, and 6s. But then the question of portion size doesn't just apply to the 4s, 5s, and 6s. And this is why we zoomed out. Portion size is going to apply to the whole chart. You're going to have questions about this all the time. How many cookies is too much cookies? How much chicken is too much chicken? How much mac and cheese is too much mac and cheese? How many baked potatoes is too many baked potatoes? And here's the answer to that. And I think this is the most important concept to understand about this chart. The scale will tell you when the portion size is too much. Your scale, if you weigh in on a weekly basis and you're not losing weight, it means that the portion size for something that you've been eating is too much. Maybe you're having too many cheeseburgers, maybe you're having too much pasta, maybe you're having too many potatoes. Okay? There could be something from any of these ranges that might be the thing that is causing you trouble. But the scale will tell you. We're going to talk about this in the next video. One of the biggest rules that you're going to have is you have to monitor yourself on a regular basis. You have to weigh in on a weekly basis. You have to check your blood sugars. You have to check your clothes size. You have to keep an eye on your medicines. Whatever goals you have to monitor those, because those will tell you if your portion size is too high. Please zoom in on my eyeballs at this part of the video. This is so important. Your results will tell you. It doesn't matter if I tell you one Oreo cookie is a serving size. It doesn't matter, because in that moment when you're about to eat Oreo cookies, I'm not there. I can't stop you. It doesn't matter if you read a nutrition label and the label says only eat 1 cup of Lucky Charms, because that nutrition label doesn't have the sentience and the willpower to stop you when you're pouring your bowl of cereal. It doesn't matter if I tell you 1 potato is the right serving, or if I tell you 10 cups of broccoli is the right serving, because I cannot force feed you 10 cups of broccoli even if it would be a good choice for you. It doesn't matter what anybody says is the proper serving, because you're the one who has to make the choice. So you're going to choose the proper serving size based on what you want. Well, this tastes really good. I want a bigger serving of it. Well, I'm really hungry. I want a bigger serving of it. Well, this is really expensive. I'm going to take a smaller serving of it. Well, I'm getting ready to go to sleep. I don't want to be up all night. I'm going to do less of this thing that has caffeine in it. I don't want to be wired, so I'll eat less chocolate later in the evening. I want more energy. I want to feel better. I'm looking for comfort foods. I'm on vacation. I want to relax and be a part of this with everybody else. You're going to choose the serving size. It doesn't matter what I say is the right serving size. You're going to choose it. And so, the right serving size for chicken is different for me than it is for you. And the right serving size for chicken when you're at a restaurant is different from the right serving size for chicken when you're at home. You need different things depending on different environments, depending on your emotions, depending on the people that you're with. And I know that this only sounds like it's making things more complicated, but it cannot be more simple. You're going to choose the serving size. And the scale will tell you if your serving size is incorrect. So I make a couple of recommendations. The first recommendation that I make is stick with the standard portion size. When you have dinner, don't worry whether it's shrimp, which is a 3, or a turkey burger, which is a 5. Keep it the same. Whatever, the size of the palm of your hand you've heard in the past. I think a good place to start might be anywhere from 4 to 8 ounces. Keep it the same. When I have a steak, when I have turkey meat, when I have chicken, when I do like a quiche, when I do an omelet, they're all the same size. Because when I eat, I always want the same size on a regular basis. If I'm a little bit hungrier, I might want more. And again, depending on other details, I might want to vary it. But in most cases, stick to a standard serving size and say, this is my serving. When you're trying to then adjust, you can just drop the serving size for everything if you want to drop it down, or increase the serving size for everything if you want to increase it. But one of the places where it gets just too complicated is when you try to memorize, well, with shrimp I get a little bit more, and with steak I get a little bit less, and with chicken I get somewhere in the middle. That's more detail than you have to apply to it. Keep it as a standard serving, and if you're having too big of a serving for dinner, you'll know where you need to adjust it if and when that time comes. Okay, that's the first recommendation that I make. The second recommendation that I make is the big picture here. When you're trying to lose weight, if you're not happy with what the scale is doing, your goal is to move, which way is it? This way, further down the chart. Okay? It doesn't matter what the labels say, it doesn't matter what I suggest. What matters is, can I get a better choice? So, if I don't like what the scale is saying, and I feel like one of the things I want to adjust is how I'm approaching eggs, okay? I need to move further down that chart in some way. I can do egg whites, or I can do egg substitute. I don't have to change my portion size at all. I can keep eating the same size eggs, but just swap them out. If I do that, I'm getting a better choice. The other thing I could do is Where I'm normally having eggs, maybe I just do chicken instead. Maybe I stop doing eggs altogether. Maybe I pick entirely different dishes. So long as you like the dishes, there's nothing stopping you from eating anything at any given moment. I'm just trying to move further down that chart. And I'll reference this in future video, but it doesn't matter how big the change is. If I'm having bacon, which is here at the top, and I know you probably can't read this, it's pretty tiny now. If I'm having bacon, I could switch to sausage. It's not great, but it's a little bit better. If it's a little bit better, I'm going to see a little bit better results. If I go even further and I get maybe like a pork chop, then I'm getting it down into the 7. Again, I'm still kind of in this high calorie range, but it's better. If I can get a little bit lower, if I can do lean red meat, this might be something with deer. I have a lot of hunters that I work with, so they'll bring me deer, they'll bring me goose or duck or something like that. Most of those fall into about this like 5.5 range. All right, that's a little bit better. Turkey sausage would be here. That's better than the pork sausage or the beef sausage that I was having. If I can go a little bit further, right, just follow that trail. You can always make better and better and better choices. And eventually, if you get all the way down to the bottom, water is the absolute lowest choice here. And if you're just drinking water, I bet you'll lose weight. I don't recommend that as anybody's diet, not healthy. But that is always an option that you have. Just keep moving further down. That's the way that this is supposed to work. The last thing that I'll say here in this section is you don't have to make a full movement. Okay, yes, the goal is to move, but you don't have to make a full movement. And this is where the idea of portion size or eating smaller portions will come into play. If I am having a cheeseburger, if I want to do better, I want to move out of the cheeseburger and down into this range, any of these other ranges, right? One option that I have is to replace the burger altogether, right? I have an all beef patty for my burger. Replace it all, make it a totally vegetarian patty, or make it a totally turkey meat patty. That's an option that I have. But I also have the option of doing half beef and half turkey. I'm moving further down the chart. I'm taking away some of the beef and replacing it with something better. But I don't have to take the entire burger away necessarily. That's something that you can experiment with. Again, I'll emphasize my recommendation is to not be in this 7 to 10 category very much at all. But this applies to these middle range more than anything else. And I really want to address this when it comes to the 4s, 5s, and 6s. And again, we'll talk about this in a future video. But it's so important, I'm going to say it twice for you in this series. If I'm having chicken, and I feel like my portion size for chicken is too much, the stock advice is going to be get a smaller plate, or cut that chicken in half, eat half as much. And that's bad advice, as we've addressed in previous videos, because you're going to be missing something. Now you're going to be sad, you're going to be hungry, you're going to finish your meal, and everybody else is still going to be eating because you had a little tiny plate, and now you're going to be weird because you're sitting there watching everybody else. That's not the way you want to approach eating a smaller portion of chicken. If you want to have a smaller portion of chicken, the way that you do it is you take away 4 ounces of chicken and you put in 4 ounces of crab meat. And I'll use this exact example in the future video. If I have 4 ounces of chicken with 4 ounces of crab meat on top, I'm not sad at all. I'm still eating the same portion size. I've replaced some of the chicken and I'm making a better choice. And I think it's going to taste good. I'd be very happy doing that. When I do soups, sometimes I'll do half chicken and half shrimp. I do that a lot. And what I'm doing there is I'm replacing some of the chicken with a food that's better. The classic example of this is if I use less chicken and I put more vegetables on my plate. I have maybe a side salad, I have green beans, I have a baked potato. I'm doing the same thing. I'm using less of that protein and I am eating a smaller portion, but my plate is not any smaller. My bowl is not any smaller. So I don't make any sacrifice. I'm putting something else in. I'm going to make it taste good, or else I'm not going to mess around with it. And if it tastes good, and if I'm not eating any less, it's just a better choice. So I'm losing weight with making no sacrifice. That's where this long-term happiness comes from. The same is true for pasta. If I want to have less pasta, or if I want to have less rice, if you're scared by this. One challenge that I had was sandwiches. I would always eat 2 turkey sandwiches for lunch. If I want to use less bread, I want to find a way of replacing it with something else. I don't just want to use less bread. So I've done a few things on that account. One thing that I did is I took away all the bread and I put my turkey meat into a salad. Sometimes I'm okay with that if the salad is made in a good way. If I have the right dressings and the right other ingredients, I'll do that. But that's one way of using less bread. I might even still use bread in that case. I might use croutons and put the croutons in the salad. But I'm still not using as much bread as I was using before. That's an option that I've tried. I've also tried lower calorie breads. There are diet breads that have less sugar, that are just overall better and lower in calories. I'll reference some of them in a list on my website. You'll see the specific brands that I use. But I can use a bread that falls maybe over here. I don't think that there are any breads that fall over here. There are some wraps that fall over here, but there are some breads that are better. So maybe that's what I do. And I still eat 2 whole big sandwiches, but it's just a better bread choice. That's an option that I can do. One option that I play around with a lot is doing open-faced sandwiches. So I have 2 sandwiches, but instead of 4 slices of bread, it's 2 slices of bread and the turkey's on top of the bread. And then I maybe have vegetables on top of that, and it's prepared in a certain way. I do that a lot with hot sandwiches. I'll do open-faced bread, then turkey, and then I have a low-fat gravy and onions and mushrooms and whatever else I want to put on top of that. So I'm using less bread, but I'm replacing it with more vegetables. I'm replacing it sometimes with more protein, and I'm replacing it with a better sauce or a better preparation so that I don't feel any sacrifice. But I'm not eating less. It's so critical that you're just not eating less. Because when you try and force yourself to do that, you might see success, but it'll always be short term. Because at some point, you have to recognize you're forcing yourself to do that. And there will be a time in your life where you don't want to force yourself. You just want to live your life. And you need to be ready to account for that. So this is the answer for portion size. You can do the same thing if you have a food that falls into these 1, 2, and 3 range. If I feel like I'm having too many potatoes, right? I could try getting smaller potatoes or just eating less potatoes. I could get rid of the potato entirely and replace it with another vegetable. But what I like to do is have a hash where it's some potatoes in the pan, but then there's onions, there's peppers, there's corn, there's something else that's going to provide some bulk. Broccoli is a really classic one that you'll see a lot. I do a lot of squash and zucchini. By doing that, I'm not eating less, but I am moving further down the chart. You can do the same thing with meal replacements. Commonly what will happen with entrees and shakes is maybe you feel like you're having too many of them. Sometimes I have 2 entrees for dinner, and there isn't a problem with me doing that. My weight loss works just fine when I have 2 prepared meals for dinner, so long as they're good meals. And by the way, there's a resource on our website where we talk about what a good entree would be. But so long as they're good meals, there's nothing stopping me from having 2 meals. But one thing that I might think about is, if I did 1 entree, could I add more vegetables to that entree and still be happy? Instead of having 2 entrees. Instead of having 2 baked potatoes, could I do 1 baked potato and then some other vegetable that goes with it? Those are ideas that you always get to play with. If you feel like you're having too many bananas or too many grapes, I get that one a lot from specifically diabetics have been told that there's a lot of sugar in grapes. If you feel like you're having too many grapes, replace some of the grapes with melon. Do a fruit salad where it's all tossed in there together. Again, I have to emphasize the most important thing, and I rank this even higher than weight loss. The most important thing is that you have to be happy. It has to taste good. It has to solve the challenges that you have, because it doesn't matter if you lose weight if you're miserable all the time. A, it's not worth living life if you're miserable all the time, even if you could stick to it forever. But B, you won't stick to it forever. You will be looking for changes at that point. I know that this has become kind of a longer video at this stage, but I really want to make sure that these ideas are crystal clear for you. Because in the next video, we're going to go forward and make a plan. And the whole idea of a plan that we're going to put together is to apply this chart and these ideas. Keep it very simple. We don't calorie count. I don't ask my clients to track carbs. We very rarely look at nutrition labels. It's just making better choices and knowing which foods are most helpful and which foods we need to try and find alternatives for. But the overall goal will always be, can I move further down, this way, further down this chart this way? If I can move further down the chart that way, I will always be making progress. I will always be getting closer and closer to my goal. And I guess we'll talk about that most in the last video, video number 5, when we talk about making adjustments. But that is the big picture. One more time, I'm going to sum it all up. For foods that are in the red background, you want to try to find a replacement that you will be happy with that gets you out of the red background. If you don't do that, you're going to have to do some work. So that is an option you always have in your back pocket, but keep looking. Even while I'm eating my ice cream, I'm still looking for other fat-free ice creams that are out there. I'm still experimenting with other choices because eventually I'm hoping that I'll find the right replacements. For the foods in the 1s, 2s, and 3s, you want to use them every day. You want probably 90% of your day to come from that category. You want to know that you can eat as much as you want. You'll very rarely get in trouble for doing it. The main thing is just figuring out how to make it work. How do I make it taste good? How do I make it fit into my routine? How do I get happy by using those foods? Finally, for the 4s, 5s, and 6s, these are good foods. They provide variety. There's no reason why you cannot eat them every day. My clients eat pasta every day. There's no reason why you cannot have it, but you need to figure out how you're going to cook it in a happy way, make substitutions for the butter and the cheese and the bacon and the oil and all of that. We got to figure out how we're going to do that and be happy with it. And then we have to figure out how we can get the portion size in a place where we're happy with that without having to brute force it. So what other foods go with it? What makes it a good, complete dish where I don't feel like I'm sacrificing in any way? And how do I bolster my willpower so that I can be satisfied with the serving that I have? That is where meal replacements come into play. If my pasta is already portion sized and it's already cooked and it's already prepared in a good way, that's one less thought that I have to make towards it. There are quite a few dishes that I personally just don't prepare for myself or I don't get at restaurants. I get one that's already prepared that's healthy. Macaroni and cheese is probably my number one answer to that. I don't really cook macaroni and cheese for myself anymore. When I crave it, I know where there's a good healthy macaroni and cheese that I can have that I think tastes good. I know what vegetables and other things I want to add to it, and I don't have to worry about it anymore. So we will talk more about all of these ideas in the next video, where we will finally put your plan down on paper. By the end of the next video, you should have something that you can actually follow on a day-to-day basis. Thank you guys for watching this video. I hope that this has been helpful for you. As always, I emphasize, if you choose not to go on to any of the other videos, that's okay, but these ideas are universal. So any other diet, any other exercise plan, anything else you want to try in the weight loss world, think about how it applies to this chart and how this might be helpful for you. Again, if you want a copy, download it from the website. Hopefully you move on and check out our future videos. I appreciate it, and good luck. Bye.